So, guys, I don't know if you've heard about this little series called My Hero Academia, but it's really good. And, seeing as it's been going on for 10 years, and, well, today we're gonna be breaking it down. Now, not just the straight up manga, but also a little bit about the show and some people attached to it. So, today, let's get started with 10 years of My Hero Academia. My Hero Academia's first chapter released July 7th, 2014, and was written and illustrated by Korei Horikoshi. The story follows Izuku Midoriya, a 14-year-old boy with a big heart and even bigger dreams. His dream is to become the number one hero like the man he used to watch on the computers all those many nights, All Might. However, in this world, not all men are created equal. Some are gifted with extraordinary powers, such as the ability to control temperatures, create anything they want, or simply put, turn the world to dust. As it turns out, 80% of the entire global population has used special, unique ability to themselves, otherwise known as a quirk. Unfortunately, Izuku is quirkless. Not an ability with a negative side effect, not a weak ability that needs to be fully utilized by a creative mind, nothing. Unfortunately, he's in middle school, meaning bullying is assured. This bully being the main rival for the rest of the show, Bakugo, a young, aggressive, rash kid with a load of natural talent and messy hair. Unfortunately, or fortunately for Izuku, Bakugo is an ass, meaning karma is going to get him eventually, and it does. But that's for later on. It's the very beginning of the show, meaning that the main character needs to continue suffering until he gets a break. And guess what? One of the forms of suffering is a giant green sludge villain who is trying to take over the body of this child and escape. But, thankfully, Superman appears out of a manhole cover, then proceeds to one-shot the monster, autograph the kid's notebook, and jump away. After that, more hijinks ensues, until the real question finally gets asked. Izuku, with his heart in his hands, asks, can someone without a quirk become a hero? And guess what? All Might, being the upstanding member of society, tells him no. And suffice it to say, that breaks Izuku's heart. Now, I was talking about Bakugo and Karma prior, and the same sludge villain that All Might dealt with somehow escaped, and now is trying to kill Bakugo as well. Izuku sees this in an alley and tries to intervene, winning the respect of All Might and showing the symbol of peace that there is finally someone who he can leave the future to. After that, we find out another shocking revelation that quirks can be transferred over. The quirk Izuku receives is One for All, which is created to help shape society for the better. Now, with the weight of the world on his shoulders, and thanks to receiving this crazy quirk, it's up to Midoriya to attend the most prominent and prestigious school for heroes, UA, and learn how to fight villains and live up to the title of world's greatest hero. Alright, now before I get into the rest of this retrospective, I would like everyone to do a quick little thing, and that is subscribe. It's free and it really helps out the channel. I cannot stress that enough. And if you like the content, please obviously like it, and if you want this video to interact with other people, such as your friends, so you can discuss it, the best way to do that is through sharing. But without further ado, let's get back to my first talking point, and that is... Alright, now that we've got the basic plot down, let's talk about the good, the bad, and most of the things in between. Let's start with probably the least controversial opinion. It looks good. Whether that be the anime made by Studio Bones or the manga drawn by Horikoshi himself, the production value is simply put very good. It's not perfect, nor is it the highest in manga or anime production. However, simply put, the level of consistency for it, especially in the case of the manga, is utterly fantastic. And I would argue that it's one of the best looking manga in current publication. Now, getting into the overall production value is far more complicated for an anime. You have the soundtrack, which is produced by Yaki Hakasaki, who worked on One Piece Film Gold. The primary director is Kenji Nagasaki, who has directed a lot of episodes, mainly from Mobile Suit Gundam 00. And with these talents, the anime has in total over 150 episodes as of recording this, along with 3 movies and even a 4th on the way. So it's safe to say that the franchise is very popular. But why is it popular? Why do people love it so much? Well, one of the aspects is the character design. And that is obviously initially created by Horikoshi, but then it was translated into anime format by Yoshiaki Yomiyasaki and Hitomi Odeyasami. But something is only as popular because of its looks. Eventually, people will grow out of it and throw it away. But unlike the popular kid from high school, my hero is still around, so there must be more to it than that. So, without further ado, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the...
I'm a normal kid without any powers. Could I ever hope to be someone like you?
If we're going to talk about the characters, we should probably talk about the one this whole story is centered around, Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya is an optimistic, nervous, caring person. He sticks his neck out for those in need, and he tries his hardest to help everyone he feasibly can. Whether that be through interfering with Ida's quest for revenge, or putting his life on the line for a kid who punched him in the balls just hours prior. Even when Midoriya is in his, edgy phase, he's still helping people, still making the world a better place. Just now he feels that he needs to take on the responsibility of an entire world by himself. That is what leads him to isolating himself. Not some sense of anger or spite, but a sense of responsibility. Not just to the people who he wants to help, but to the hero who allowed him to get there in the first place, being All Might. Speaking of All Might, it's time we talk about my favorite character and why he's my favorite character. Getting this out of the way, he's a Superman parody, and he's awesome. He has an unbelievable presence, but those are just 2 general, more simplistic reasons I like him. Another reason is, whereas Midoriya is like a coming-of-age story, All Might is already there. We're not watching him become the greatest in the world, we're watching his fall from grace. And that's intriguing to watch. Watching him deal with his failures of his hero career, and his entire career collapse around him, while simultaneously trying to keep up and holding up hope thanks to Midoriya. And this leads to a really, really fascinating dynamic between the 2 of them. And we actually hear how similar they are, meaning that we're able to pierce together some of All Might's past with a general level of accuracy, thanks to how Midoriya operates. And now, obviously, they are different, and there is a substantial difference between their 2's journeys and heroism. However, they were able to fill in the blanks, leading us to gain a further appreciation of All Might. On top of that, thanks to him having arguably the most important role in all of society, this leads to us seeing the direct responses of his actions, whether that be through positive or negative. For example, obvious negatives, Shigaraki and All For One, but All Might inspired far more heroes than just Midoriya. There's Bakugo, the main rival, who we watch slowly but surely realize he's not as talented or important as he thinks he is, but slowly grow a conscience and even regret the things that he's done to the main character, and then fully cementing himself as an actual hero. There's Todoroki, a sweet boy, but unfortunately, he's dealing with a tragic past and an even horrible present, leading to us rooting for him and cheering him on even more. Even characters who do, relatively speaking, fall into more average tropes, such as the main love interest being Ochako Uraraka, she has feelings for the main protagonist. That's a blatant fact in the story. However, she not only puts that to the side in order to further benefit the society she's currently working to uphold, she also repeatedly improves her skills and has her almost own training arcs, such as her getting a self-defense training course by a professional hero, leading to her beating her main opponent and main opposite being Himito Toga. But I did just bring up a villain, so it's only fair that I bring up the leader of the villains and what I would argue is one of the greatest antagonists of our current era, Tomura Shigaraki. Now, I bet a lot of you are wondering why I say that, especially in an era where there's monsters such as Sukuna, Makima, and Kaido running around. But the one thing those three pale in comparison to Shigaraki is, simply put, development. I'm just gonna get right to the point. Shigaraki is a joke when you first meet him. He's an actual joke. You don't take him seriously. He's whiny, he's all knowing, but he lacks clear planning skills, and he really just went in there thinking Anomu would just sort of win him the day. However, then something interesting happens. He loses. That's not the surprising part. The surprising part is then he attempts to change. He attempts to get better in his own sort of evil way by meeting someone who has captivated people, that being Stain, who helps change Shigaraki's outlook on villainy and what it means to be a symbol of evil. Then, All for One gets taken care of, and guess what? Shigaraki is now on his own in a leadership role, having to figure things out and survive with no support from his master, fully cementing himself as a villain, and then he has to fill in the role as a main character for an entire arc. On top of that, due to Shigaraki's resolve and new awakening, he receives a brand new ally, new resources, which is actually something quite common for a main protagonist to get in a story. Now, obviously, this is a very brief summary of all the development that Shigaraki has gone through in over 400 chapters we've seen him, but it's safe to say that he feels like a fully developed and fully realized character. I'm so unbelievably happy with how well his story arc went and his conflict with Midoriya. But a world full of wonderful characters sticks out like a sore thumb if you fill the world with nothing but gray. Thankfully, the world is just as vibrant as you've come to expect from how well I've been hyping up the rest of the show. So, without further ado, let's talk about the I'm going to start this off with a question. Why does no one talk about this? No, like, seriously. When was the last time you saw someone talk about the world building of MHA? Like, genuinely. I've seen videos primarily dedicated to, how bad Midoriya is, but the only world building video that I've seen in relative recent memory is one by Mahis TV. And I'm going to be frank, I really like that video. I think you guys should all go watch it to get a better understanding of how good the world building is in My Hero. So what do we know about the world of My Hero? Well, technically that's a poorly constructed question, because in all honesty we should be asking what we don't know, because simply put, there's so much detail crammed into almost every chapter that the world is not only feels alive, but I would argue is the second most important character behind Midoriya. For example, in order to find out how heroes get ranked, we find out two things. It takes into account how many crimes they've stopped, but also their popularity, leading to Endeavor, the number 2 hero, having a higher crime-solving percentage than All Might. However, due to All Might, he is more popular, and obviously he's more powerful, but that's not as much as a contributing factor to his number 1 placement. This leads to Endeavor seeking out other ways to surpass All Might, which leads us in to information about quirk marriages, which is another piece of world building. Thus, this plot point alone not only makes the world feel more fresh, since we find out all kinds of additional information about how certain people are willing to procreate with one another in order to create stronger quirks, but also the world is structured in a certain way, and that directly leads to the creation of Todoroki, and later down the line, thanks to further injections of morality thanks to our main protagonist, the entire Endeavor family gets a full-blown character arc in every sense of the word. And something very similar happens to Shigaraki. After a tragic event, Hero Society is structured that heroes take on everything, including saving a little kid like that. So Shigaraki, being a screwed up kid walking around, no one's willing to help him. and it leads to a person with malicious intent abducting him and turning him into a symbol of evil. And there are so many instances where we're simultaneously combining information about the world with character development. On top of that, there's just so much information. Regardless of whether or not it affects the plot, it allows the audience to feel like this world is not only fleshed out, but so close to realized that I genuinely feel like that you could make a documentary on it and it would fit right in. Horikoshi has thought of clothing brands that would have to make adjustments for quirk users. There's an entire industry built around just supporting heroes. There's a subsection of UA that is strictly dedicated to the marketing of future heroes. And you find out that the sports festival is a way of advertisement. That way, students can show off their quirks and firepower, so when they get into the real world, they'll have a better experience. We find out that certain people are even willing to modify themselves in a unique way, such as a news anchor being willing to cut off one of his horns so his audience has a better experience. And this is just a continuous stream of important information being delivered to you in a digestible aspect. Anyone can fully understand this fully realized world because you see this world with your own eyes. You understand what's good about it and what's bad about it. And that makes you root for the heroes even more. It also gives more credence to the villains. You see the bad in the world as well, and it fully immerses you in it, allowing the world itself to become a character that you care about and become something that you are completely invested in and willing to see change. And it's a marvelous piece of writing. I am truly shocked that people don't talk about the world building of My Hero Academia because it is truly phenomenal, and I would argue one of the best series I've seen in this aspect. And you know what? Maybe, just maybe, it's on the same level as One Piece. But you know what? That's for the comments to decide. Anyway, I should wrap all this up. So I'm just going to end it off on this. All stories are not created equal. Some have good characters, some make you so invested in the world that you love it more than your own, and some stories have such phenomenal artwork that you just sit down and read it no matter what. But you truly do realize how unfair stories are when you realize Horikoshi was able to write a story with all three. I love My Hero. I think it's a great series. I'm glad it's been going on for 10 years, and I'm glad you've had this decade to experience it with me. So, without further ado, this is Rox signing off.